More Pacific cyclone rumblings ahead in multiple locations on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for January 10th. Back with a new week and a new picture across the world today. Code blue, but no active storms. We had the very short-lived Harley. That's our second storm of the year so far. But right now, nothing currently active, but we are looking at a few areas of interest. So let's zoom in and take a look at these regions in more detail. In the Atlantic, it's 142 days until hurricane season, and there's just a few fronts moving off the coast there. No areas of interest. But we still have a look at the Atlantic just in case, because you never know when things might start up. But let's take a look at where the actual action is. It's the Western Pacific, where we have an area of interest that's starting to look a little bit better near the coast of the Philippine Islands and could become a broad tropical cyclone in the next few days. We've given it 10%. Another 30% system now, low chance still at the moment, but those chances are increasing in the Indian Ocean, headed towards the southwest Indian Ocean, and may eventually make a run towards Madagascar. Models have been calling for this one for a good while now, and it looks like it might come to fruition fairly soon, but towards the end of the 5-day period. We also have a third 10% area of interest in the southeastern Pacific here. This is not far from French Polynesia, around 150 to 155 degrees west, and that one could go on and affect the Austral Islands as a tropical cyclone, or a hybrid cyclone depending on how it does, towards day 5. Satellite imagery in the last 24 hours looks like this. Look out for any red zones. That's where we've seen enormous amounts of precipitation, those hot spots there, and quite a few of them just off the coast of the Philippines. So we are concerned about rainfall there in the next few days, which we'll elaborate on in a little while. But here's how this system is looking right now, and we're having a bit of a crisis with satellite imagery at the moment, particularly in the Western Pacific. It's not the best right now, we're having a few difficulties, but this is what we've managed to see out of the early visible images today of this potential tropical cyclone, and certainly it is extremely large when you take a look at it compared to the Philippine Islands there. Those bursts of convection, and if this was a fully fledged tropical cyclone, you'd be able to sort of picture where the eye of it would be, and it would be an extremely large one if it had one. But at present right now, it's delivering a lot of precipitation, particularly to the west and to the north side of it, and to the south as well actually. It's just the east side that's really bare. As we flick over to some other geocolor imagery, and as you can see, it's pretty poor loading the imagery right now, but there is some more imagery of how this system is progressing. Winds of up to around 30 miles per hour at present. That's around 50 kilometers per hour, and obviously steady rainfall with high accumulations and high rain rates expected in the next few days, which means that the Philippine Islands, particularly the eastern islands, have major flooding concerns. Here's some even worse looking imagery that's hardly working at all actually, looking at Meteosat 9 in the southwestern Indian Ocean, and well, even though we've only got 2 images that it's running through by the looks of things, you can see this big sprawling area of convection, not very well organized and not very large areas either. That will eventually become, we think, this potential tropical cyclone, and whether it actually makes it all the way to cyclone status or not is still a big question mark, but it certainly seems like it's getting to be a more distinct possibility, and it will probably be higher than the 30% chance. It's just a little bit far out still in that 5-day period. And just a quick look back at the Western Pacific storm, I think, or perhaps not actually. Let's go to the sea surface temperatures then, and this is what the world looks like today. Look out for areas that are 79 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer. That correlates to 26 degrees Celsius. That is conducive for tropical cyclone formation, or the color coding there at the top, if that helps at all. Not sure if it does, but 26 degrees, quite commonplace in the Caribbean, although there's nothing going to be forming there for a while. The Atlantic is well and truly shut down. Hot temperatures in overland in Africa, and in the Indian Ocean there, temperatures up to 26-27 degrees Celsius, pushing 28 actually in the Arabian Sea. Southwest Indian Ocean, the Mozambique Channel is a hot spot, 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. Off the coast of Madagascar, around 27, and 27 extending all the way out to sea, well towards the deep tropics there. Off the west coast of Australia, a bit cooler, around 24-25 degrees, but towards the tropical zone, still remaining very warm. Gulf of Carpentaria, piping hot, 28-29 degrees Celsius at least. And into the South Pacific as well, decent temperatures extending all the way down to Fiji and further, and down to New Caledonia and towards part of southern Queensland. Into the Western Pacific, temperatures at those deep latitudes still remain very warm, and even at those higher latitudes, 80 degrees Fahrenheit there to the east of the Mariana Islands. That's warm enough for tropical cyclone development. South China Sea a bit colder there on that whistle-stop tour. Looking at the anomalies, the Western Pacific is above average, so the system near the Philippines might have a chance. Look at that massive cool pool off the west coast of Australia now. That's fascinating to look at. Temperatures are still warm there, but it is well below average, and much above average near Fiji and New Caledonia. South Pacific might be revving up soon. And the La Nina patch is still very much there as well. Oceanic heat content looks like this, and it is still rising as it continues southwards a little bit, passing close to the Fijian Islands now, those orange areas showing very good oceanic heat content. And this is the Western Pacific, good values there as well to the southwest of Guam, a little patch there, but generally still remaining fairly low in those values. Let's check the GFS computer model then over the next 5 days, and this is how things are looking. You can see this very broad system trying to develop on a few occasions there. Latest suggestions is that it will remain too broad and it won't be able to get all of that convection, or rather the rotation, sorted out, so it will be a struggle. But regardless, it is going to be a big rain event for the eastern part of the Philippine Islands, and it's going to lead to very high amounts of rainfall. In the southwest Indian Ocean, look out for that new potential cyclone near the top right hand side. It starts to develop slowly, and it is still a while off before it starts to really get going. Just waiting for it. There it is near the end of that 5-day period. It is on day 5 that happens, so 30%. GFS not really buying it so much just yet. Other models are a little bit more optimistic, but the GFS does take its sweet time with this one forming, and it moves the beast a little bit before it manages to get going. And this is the South Pacific. Fiji on the left hand side there, and on the right hand side is towards French Polynesia. You'll see 2 potential cyclones. There's 1 and 2, both of those tropical storm status. The second one on the right hand side possibly reaching hurricane equivalent status as it passes through the small Austral Island chain south of the main islands of French Polynesia. The other system forming near Fiji, we haven't marked it though because of a high amount of uncertainty, sweeping southwest as a weaker tropical storm and then starting to gain momentum as it moves further south. Interesting. In the Philippines, this is what we're looking at for rainfall in the next 7 days. Look out for those red areas that turn pink over large parts of Samar and over a fair amount of Catanduanes and the southeastern part of Luzon. So very high amounts of rain in that area, but Samar in particular, we could be looking in excess of 20 inches of rainfall, maybe up to 28 inches. That is 700 millimeters of rainfall in 7 days. That's 100 per day. An extraordinary amount if that happens in some of those coastal communities on the east coast. Inland it will still be possibly 20 inches, that's 500 millimeters, and up to 10 inches, 250 millimeters for Catanduanes. And this is looking now at the southwest Indian Ocean. And you can see this cyclone really does get going in the day 5 through 10 period. This is the medium range, and look at that, a large system and a very powerful one as well. Tropical storm force winds being felt on both Mauritius and on the island of Reunion, and reaching the eastern coast of Madagascar. The hurricane force winds stay offshore and continue southwestwards and just get very close to Madagascar by the end of that 10-day period. That's clearly a category 4 though on that imagery. And in the South Pacific, there's another potential system there. I can't remember if that was a continuation of the first one or not. Let's just watch that back again. Ends up moving down towards New Zealand. I think that is a continuation of the one that we were watching, and then that continues southwards, turns post-tropical, loses a bit of strength, but still has gale force winds by the time he reaches the North Island. A new system forming right at the end there as well off Australia. Scan the barcode and take a look at the Force 13 merch store, where we have all of our usual products, including our fine branded merch and our still waiting for Hone t-shirt, which we'll still be waiting for a while, as well as individual and full season animations. In the Scilly Range, this powerful cyclone continues to affect the coast of Madagascar. Hurricane force winds there, and then it starts to move further southwards, so it doesn't actually make a landfall, but it does cause serious impacts, and then continues southwards, southeastwards, extremely broad extratropical transition, but that is what the GFS is suggesting into the long range. It is still quite a way off yet, but the consistency in these models has been quite telling, and it does look like we are going to see a significant tropical cyclone next week headed towards Madagascar. And in the Australian region, another tropical cyclone forming there in the Coral Sea. That's the one we saw just the beginnings of in the last part, and that becomes a significant tropical cyclone as well. Meanders back towards the coast of Queensland and gives it a pretty close pass as well, continuing down southeastwards past the Whitsundays and Fraser Island and down towards the southern part of the Coral Sea. That one, of course, is very long range again, so I wouldn't put any faith into that one yet at all, considering the formation is well out of bounds as well. The 2022 Atlantic hurricane season, what might have been, looks like this. Well, it's here. The Atlantic what might have been for 2022 is on its way, premiering this Friday night on Force 13. Well, on this day in 1980, we had a very powerful cyclone Amy making a Category 4 landfall on Western Australia. It reached Category 5 status briefly just before making landfall, before dropping just slightly to a 155 mile per hour landfall. That is still a Category 5 on the Australian scale, and a very powerful storm it was. There's a radar image near the landfall, and it looks like it was probably undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle when it was doing so. Fascinating stuff. That was Cyclone Amy. Well, back to this year, and the Atlantic naming list kicks off with Arlene, the Eastern Pacific, Adrian, and the Central Pacific. We'll see Hone. Whether it's this year or not is another question. Into the Western Pacific, the next name now is still Sanvu. The North Indian Ocean's next name is Mocha. We've seen two storms so far, if you count Ellie's second coming, as well as Harley in the South Pacific, which we've just had, so we'll be seeing a new name coming up now. The next name in the Southwest Indian Ocean is Freddy. It is Chiniso, the Australian region Freddy, and the South Pacific, it's Irene. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.